Welcome to The Lumber Word, where industry veterans Matt Beamer, Gregg Riley, Charles Dillatore, and Ashley Buckhold dissect the world of commodity lumber each week. We bring you up-to-date insights on supply, demand, and market trends, plus use our combined experience to tell you what it all means. Join us for informative and entertaining discussions that guarantee to make you wiser about all things lumber.
Everybody, welcome to this week's episode of The Lumber Word, episode 121. It's the same episode frontwards as it is backwards. I think that's a palindrome, isn't it, in a name?
Yeah.
I mean, you just completely lost our entire audience.
I have no idea what you were talking about, Ash.
Yeah.
That's okay. I bid on lumber and palindromes. So glad everybody's here. Had a lot of people live last week watching. I hope I launched it live today. I think I did. Lots to talk about today, guys. Market seems to have a little bit of giddy up. Seems to be. I'll update it real quick, and then we can go through. Are you awake there, Charles?
I'm trying to stay. You woke me up from a nap for this.
That's
the market's so lively. I'm
working
over here
hard.
with my feet kicked back.
Putting in the hours.
So
I'm here.
it seems like we had a lot of activity in buying the last few weeks. I think we can arguably say, I could say from the spruce side that the low trade prices that we probably all bought some items at over the last 2 weeks are pretty much unattainable at this point. And if you want me to give you an example, 2x4 16s are probably in spruce, probably $30 now over what the low, 30 to 50 over what the low trade price was. And that's
what
just
was the low trade price?
That's just how the world works. I would say the low trade price was somewhere around 580-ish to northeast locations, 590. Does that make sense? That area?
Yeah, 70, 75 to 80, 85. I think low trade, in euro down the Cape was probably the low 600s.
Delivered?
No, FOB port.
I would say 625, 630 low trade price on 2x4 16s. Except we'll probably get, that one odd guy that says like I bought it this price, and 2x6 16s.
That guy, is that the same guy that sold at 800?
I don't know. It's so things are moving.
I'm getting a lot of prices with no freight is what I'm getting, but I'm being told it's delivered.
The world does not revolve around Bishopville, South Carolina.
Listen, I'm thinking outside the box here, and I got guys that are throwing some numbers that are extremely aggressive, and when you look at some of the levels that we're seeing, we missed. There's got to be a freight adder there somewhere.
We missed what was going on in Pine. I mean, we have the first Pine futures contract expiring tomorrow. And I'm showing East Side 2x4s.
520. 520 was last. 520, right?
Yeah, it's currently bid at 526, offered at 529. We got no trade. We got no trade today. No trade. So we'll finish up on spruce, go to pine. Spruce, it seems to me that the items that I can say have firmed up are 4-inch and some 2x4 9-foot stud, 2 and better, maybe some 8-foot trims, 2x6 studs and 2x6 9-footers are still a dog's breakfast. Is that the right way to say it? Or is that English breakfast? It's like they're
dog shit.
They're all over the place. 2x6, 116s, 2x6, 104 and 5As. But there's people putting bids on some stuff today. There's some things moving. One of the mills came out the other day and said, we're going to take some shutdowns for a week at one and one for one location. And generally, I still think that long-term, we may see prices move higher, but when mills are taking downtime at places, it's usually because they have too much dressed inventory sitting around. My opinion.
Matt, does that happen at your mills? Do you guys do that? Like, was that like a reason why you would take downtime is because you had no more room in the yard to store stuff?
No, we'd probably just go lease some more space and stack it higher. But
good answer. God, I love you. God, you're the best.
I mean, there's lots of commercial real estate available in the world these days, buddy. But no, I'm kidding. We generally if we curtail things, it's usually just overall market conditions. It's more about liquidity than it is about how much dressed inventory do we have. So I think we as a company are pretty disciplined when it comes to keeping our inventories balanced. It's just how we do it. And I think that in this scenario that we're talking about for the summer coming up, there's going to be some more like actual economic discussions, not necessarily have anything to do with inventory amounts, but just math. And
Yeah.
and these are things that we can't avoid unless they can renegotiate this deal, which doesn't appear to be likely. So there's going to be some fiscal pain and suffering and belt tightening going on in Canada, specifically for a period of time, starting sometime in July, August. And how the mills react to that is going to be different for every sawmill complex. Because if you've got 10 sawmills versus one sawmill, that you could have a different plan. But I do believe it'll tighten up supply and it'll open up the door to more Doug fir and hem fir and Western lumber that comes from the United States to fill in some niches temporarily. But it's going to hurt the guys that need spruce. And if you've got to have spruce for your truss plant, you need some MSR that comes out of Canada with an MSR stamp on it. It's going to really affect that, right? It's going to affect your spruce premium programs that people have. Anything where it's required to have spruce, like Phoenix is a good example of a market that's a spruce market. They will dabble in hem fir and Doug fir, but they want to buy spruce if they have a choice. And so, there's going to be other places that don't care. Denver doesn't buy spruce unless it's for a truss plant. I mean, they stock hem fir and Doug fir, so what do they care? But it will have an impact for sure. I don't know if that answers your question, Greg, but there's my stab at it.
That was good. That was good.
So really, you're saying the reason why they may be curtailing is because of a lack of liquidity and financial environment that we're in? Is that?
I mean, a lot of mills,
the gist of it.
Typically, Greg's right. Mills will curtail due to lack of liquidity and too much inventory. What I meant to say was that, to be clear, that I think this time some of the mills in Canada will curtail production and have nothing to do with how much inventory they have dressed on the ground. But just because the math isn't going to work for them to a point where they can justify taking some downtime. It'll be cheaper for them to just take the mill down for a month or two, even pay their employees or get some help from their government to pay their employees, than it would be to just eat those losses. Right? You understand that, Charles?
That would be the power play, Matt. Is you hit something there? Is like, what if Canadian producers, Eastern and Western, said, hey, we've got this big increase in our countervailing duty that's going to come into play in, like September 1st. Maybe what we should do is shut down a substantial portion of our production in July and August to see what the market price is at that point in time, as opposed to running and having prices down and then having to deal with that tariff. That would be a really interesting. I don't run a sawmill, so I don't pretend to know all of the reasons why they can't do that or they wouldn't do that. But that would be, because one of the things is like, hey, if there's going to be if it's going to be a 30 to 40% countervailing duty in anti-dumping, then what does that put Western and Eastern Canadian mill break even at? Does that put it at $100 over today's price, $150 over today's price?
It's significant. It's a math deal, dude. You got a 45% tax on your product to ship it across this. It doesn't matter what country it doesn't even matter what product is. Okay. Like their dollar would have to go down to like less than 50 cents on the US dollar to capture some of that money back. That's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. So, what do? You either sell it within your own country, which there's only so much consumption in Canada. They have 35 million people. Texas has 35 million people. To put that into perspective.
I never thought about it that way, Matt.
And
that's a hell of a lens.
You go overseas. Mills
run for long periods of time and don't make money. I mean, that's not something new. But obviously, when you're looking at, having to permanently change your cost for the next 12 months, as dramatic as that, what is the strategy? Should the strategy be, let's curtail production now or in the next 30 to 45 days in front of that to see if the market will move up to a level that supports us with the higher countervailing duty ADD? Or do we just run and wait to see what happens and then curtail in the fourth quarter because it's uneconomical, right?
They're already not making money.
Right, and they're still running. And everyone's still running.
Right. Well, they also have offsetting, U.S. production. So that's where they are making money. Or some have some OSB where they made some money last year. I don't know if they're making money this year, but it's just the economics of it from the top down do not look very favorable going forward. And I don't like to say that because we own Canadian sawmills. We have 3 of them, and it's not fun.
And they're all like running one shift because just limping along, pretty much.
I don't know what our production levels are, so I just stay out of that for the most part.
And you know what? You shouldn't really share that on the show anyhow, because
even if I knew, I probably would say.
I was about to type the message.
Right. Yeah. I felt bad. I felt bad asking the question. As soon as I asked it, I'm like, again, what a dick move,
Well, I kind of want to switch back to something that Ashley started the whole show with.
But hold on, I have a question. I have a question on that topic, though. Once again, my knowledge is limited, but I feel like a lot of sawmill operators, doesn't matter what the species is, like the monopoly money's over with. Like the bottomless pit of just dollars to be able to do and survive and just say we're gonna run like the wind. Like now we're getting back to like real world business. Is that a fair set? Because that's happening in the South too.
I think
because
so,
because even some of the operators that may have U.S. assets, and obviously OSB's got a lower break even than dimensional lumber, and those operators are, even at the levels that we're at now, are still making a little bit of money on that product. But from a Southern Yellow Pine pure dimensional lumber play, these guys are not making any money. None of them are at this point. But I think now, whereas this time last year it was, well, we'll figure it out. And to your point, Matt, now it's the oh shit moment. Like now it's time for the rubber to meet the road and figure out exactly how we're going to play this, because it wasn't just a 12 or 18 or 24 month blip on the radar that we're having to live with. Like I don't know where the tunnel ends. Is that a fair assessment?
I think you're 100% right. We're 2 to 3 years removed from the free money, the windfall generational income.
Yeah.
And, companies don't look back forever, right? They've either spent that money already or
$400 on 2x12. And you can't make money at under $400 on 2x12. Really?
What was the price last year? 12 and longer was average $485. Yeah. It's pretty tough.
So back to Ash, you said that you felt like the bottom was in and that you guys are, fairly busy. Is that correct?
I would say,
Matt, we are bulled up over here in a big way. We're saying that we're at the edge of turning the corner and things are going to get somewhere between a little better.
Listen,
you got real amped up before you got there. I didn't know where it was going.
Matt, I can tell you,
stop going down before you can go up.
I would say full disclosure. We probably, if you think about this, many items, especially 2x4, 104 and 5/8, are significantly higher than they were a year ago or at this time, right? We're operating with probably half the inventory that we had a year ago. And
thank God.
And we're using this and that's a lot. That's a big, and we're using this as an opportunity to clean up the cats and dogs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we still can't sell 2x4, 104 and 5/8 finger joint at $100 under Random Lengths print, but that's a whole other story.
Swinging with it, I don't know.
I don't mean to be.
Y'all are controversial today.
But I don't want to rain on your guys' little happy parade that you're having over there. But I'm telling you, in my world, it's not that good. And so
mine either.
Yeah, the Western lumber thing is still a struggle. Huh?
No, Greg. Yeah. So Greg was doing that little tongue in cheek. And I think. We're using this as an opportunity. We're using this as an opportunity to clean up our stuff, anything that we've got sitting around, And you know what? If it's a really good market, everything that you got that's a cat and dog should be able to get cleaned up. And
it's not.
It's not.
Greg always likes to say, how many homes are for sale?
All
of them.
Yeah.
How much of my inventory is for sale? All of it.
All right.
Yeah.
So Matt,
every day.
And full disclosure, we do have a significant amount of inventory like hedged. So I'm like, I want to be bulled up in the worst way. I mean, if you think last year at this time, we talked for May and June about, the market's going to turn around. The market's going to turn around. I want to go misdirection this time. I want to say, hey, you know what? This market's never turning around. Everybody should just figure that it's going to stay down and go lower forever.
Yeah, we should actually. That's a good plan. I think
you said, I'm happy you said that out loud because usually you're counterintuitive. So lately you have been.
Maybe that'll work.
Excuse me?
Counterintuitive. Opposites attract.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Well, we got a regional dichotomy going on here.
Joe, look at
and all this big talk.
So Matt,
a lot of big words, Matt.
You hit on something.
I don't know what dichotomy
means. We're getting your get your thesaurus out.
You hit on something good. What are you seeing in your world? Like you pretty much like hit the Texas market and everything. You got a lot of the U.S. species. I mean, how are you feeling on stuff?
I was really busy on Monday, and I had I'd say a decent to good week last week. Just kind of a good mixture of rail and truck business. It wasn't electric, but it was certainly just a good solid week, right? And the Monday started off really good. I was excited. I'm like, oh, this is great. I'm getting all kinds of orders. I'm getting all kinds of inquiry. And then yesterday was just a dud. And then today's been a little bit better than a dud, but it's still not that busy for me overall. So the point is that if you guys feel like the market's turned around on on the eastern side of the country, then I would be happy to hear that, because I don't feel that same sense of energy or pulse in my day-to-day trading here. And it's not just me personally. I mean, I do sell a lot of lumber, but Hampton corporate sells a lot of lumber every single day, right? I mean, we got a lot of stuff going on, and I'm really just a reflection of what's going on behind me on the trading floor. There's business every day, but it's nothing to get excited about. And there's still a lot of the negotiating going on. So you're always, does the tally fit? Does the price work? Does the ship time work? I mean, there's a handful of orders you just get because you make it and it's a specialty item, like say long lengths, for example. There's only like 4 mills that make it. So we just get orders. But if I was to go out there and try to sell a bunch of random 2x4, I got to compete with the rest of the world. And in the West, it doesn't seem as though there's a lot of juice right now. There's just sort of maintenance buying going on. Is kind of how I feel.
Well, the one thing that I see is that Western species, in the narrows at least, are really overvalued to the overall market and to spruce 2x4s, which is surprising that they've been able to maintain those higher relative prices. I mean, I feel the same thing about East Side 2x4 yellow pine. It's overvalued to the spruce market and to its market in general. 2x12 just blows my mind when you're looking at all the species where it's sub $400 FOB mill.
Greg, that's an old person's width, 2x12. No, Charles will tell you that nobody uses that anymore. 2x12.
No, that's 10 inch. That's
10 inch. Okay.
12 inch. 12 inches.
But nobody may use it, but the mills still make it. So
shouldn't 2x12 be worth more than 2x4?
It should be worth 2x4 and 2x6 together, because you put them together.
Like, didn't it used to trade for like $800? Now it's less than half that.
Well, I mean,
is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what he's saying. I mean, last year the average 12-foot and longer was $485, give or take. Right? Don't quote me on that, please. I don't need to get corrected, but it was close to $500, right? And the fact of the matter is that now, in the wet time of year that we're in, I mean, it's rained here for 6-7 days out of the last 10. I mean, between Saturday and Monday, we got 5 inches on Monday and 2.5 over the weekend. So big logs gives you 12 inch. Big logs are always in the back. Gets wetter, right? And this is typically the time of year where 12-inch increases, but it hasn't caught. And that's what I don't know. That, in my opinion, is a big indicator of where 4-inch is going to be, because it is a pure derivative of 4-inch, just like 8-inch. And we start talking about net return to the mill and board footage per lug and et cetera. I mean, that something's going to give. And especially to Gregg's point, I mean, you look at East Side 4-inch and it's completely overvalued against any species anywhere else if you look at it from a historical standpoint.
So why is that, Charles? Since I can deliver stuff out of the West Side in Central Mills at a lot cheaper than I can to most locate. Is it just trading at that big number in a radius this big on a map that would take up my whole room? Or, I've even seen 2x4 number 1 now coming off a lot more, where 2x4 number 1's almost the same price as 2x4 number 2.
Number 1's a big treater item, and treaters are stepping out of the open market. They're leaning more heavily on contracts. So that's happened over the past 3 weeks.
How is 4-inch East Side? I don't
have a crystal clear answer for you, because
can you buy underprint? Can you buy underprint if you piece it together with randoms or with straight links? How much?
12s, or I don't know where print is. Hold on. I like to use relative numbers. So 12 is $500 bucks. Make them up. Say minus anywhere from -50 to -75, depending on where you're at, where it's going.
Okay. So would you be a buyer of random lengths at 520 right now, print?
No.
So what you're saying is you can buy significantly under that.
Well, I mean, I think the little bit of trading that the Southern Yellow Pine contract has done, and it's about to, expire, right? I mean, look at the spread, 526, 529 and 472. I mean, that tells you everything you need to know directionally, right? The number doesn't have to be spot on, but it tells you directionally what's going to happen.
Yeah. July's $55 underneath.
So, I mean, and I don't really understand that. And then, you have pine guys that are finally mill reps that are finally paying attention to what spruce is doing. I heard a couple guys say, oh, the downward pressure on spruce is easing up, and 4-inch is still good, and yada, yada, yada. Well, I had some wood I had to cover, and I got quoted out of the Central to come back east.
Yeah.
And in state, same state, 2 different companies, $75 spread.
Wow. Wow.
What does that tell you?
That gives the reporting services a complete, a complete pass that whatever they do, they can't win when there's a $75 spread, because somebody's going to say it's too high, somebody's going to say it's too low.
I mean, Ash, one of your buddies texted me and asked me about the daily print price at least once or twice a week. And,
we know who that is.
Well, I know. I'm script.
Yeah.
But
respect.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, he's like, there's no way that's right. Where are you buying at? And I mean, 2 weeks ago, before 4-inch started coming off, I mean, we were still 50, 60, 70 under. I mean, on 10-foot a week ago, $85 to $90, almost $100 on 5 trucks, not 35.
Yeah.
No, permission to make a trading recommendation to the listeners out there.
No, you can do whatever you want, Gregg. You put your stamp on it. This is not a Charles Delatorre deal.
Well, you got to be careful giving me permission, because I'll start the buy right away.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna say that like end users and even distributors should say it's mid-May, June, July, August, September. You know what? If as much money or space they have 2x12 usage, they should buy
it all.
There's no reason.
I agree with that.
There is no reason not to buy whatever 2x12. I mean, we should probably buy some and put in the warehouse, just to give the recommendation street cred.
So that's crazy. The 4 inches at 520 east side and 395, even though east side isn't a big producing region at 2x12, but it's 395 on the east side. So you want to buy the 2x12 on the east side if you can truly pick it up there.
Now, and so interestingly enough, look at the spread between 2x12, number 1 and number 2. Look at that. You want to talk about a gap?
So I like it.
10 foot, 115. 16 foot, $40, $70 on 14s, 55 on 12s. And a week ago, they were getting premiums on top of that for number one because treaters are still in the market. I don't know if that's still the case, but.
By the way, I got feedback why Southern Pine Mills don't like to put paper on. And it makes the most sense in than anything I've ever heard. Because when they send Southern Pine to treaters, some of the treaters want to charge them to take the paper off. Treaters don't want paper. And since treaters buy a large part of Southern Pine, and they're usually the first option to a lot of these mills, they don't want to put on wrap because a lot of the places don't like it. That's what I heard. If that makes sense, that could be it.
I don't know. I feel like there's a simple solution to that. If that's real, I mean, that's like me saying I don't like cutting custom cuts just because not everybody buys them.
It's like me saying I don't like cutting the lawn because I have a question about this whole thing with the treaters. Charles, you've mentioned treaters a few times here on this deal, and they're slowing down and they're only relying on their contracts. Why is that? This is the busy time of year for the treaters, correct? I mean, there should be I think just like everybody. Yeah, I think everybody bought ahead of themselves because of the tariff. I mean, and I think Ash brought it up. We pulled a bunch of business forward or back or whatever, right? And everything kind of flowed into one bucket. And now the bucket's empty, and here we are. I mean, if you look at Big Box and what their takeaway is or projected takeaway, I mean, I've heard from some pretty reliable sources that these guys are having conversations about how to minimize their inventory in May when that is a conversation for September, October.
Really?
Just because they don't want the capital costs, they don't want to have the liability of the wood on the ground. There's really no motivation to have more than what they need to cover. And I mean, this is pretty reliable. I mean, top notch here. So it's it's kind of concerning, I guess, is my point.
I'll say two things. We haven't seen that we have home center contract business, and we haven't seen any pushback on that yet. I don't know, Matt, if you'd be willing to comment.
Our business is steady as she can be. There's no massive upswing. This is just a normal year. It's really similar to last year. And so it's been pretty predictable. This is one of the reasons why I've been saying I feel like this year is going to be very similar to last year, just because I feel like most of the conditions that we are operating under are pretty similar. You throw in the new duty and anti-dumping fees that we're going to be facing in the second half of the year. That's a curveball, right? So that's something that's different. There's also less euro. Apparently, there's less euro coming in right now and in the future. So that's going to be different than last year. I don't think we were trading yellow pine at $400 FOB mill last year at this time in 2x12. So, there's some things that are different about this market, but I feel like the overall demand side and production side is pretty similar. Is why I've been saying, hey, if we can get prices up to 700, I don't think it's going to go any higher than that. Show me, right? Like, just prove it. If it goes higher than that, then I lose on that bet and I make a lot more money on my inventory. I'll take that bet. That's fine.
I'm going to take the under. I'll take the under.
But I was getting to the point of, so in the upper Midwest, is the weather are you off to a slow spring start? Is it still cold and wet and nasty, or is it starting to be like?
I'm thinking about going out and playing an emergency 9. It's beautiful here today.
Okay. It was 62 degrees when I got my.
Well, truck. Greg would play an emergency. What's your rule? Not under 50, you won't golf. Over 50,
I don't. It's like under 50 degrees. I'm not interested.
So it's just over. It's just over 50 today.
Your blood's too thin, huh, Greg?
It's 72. It's
by the way, over on the east side of town, we got fog, so I could barely see.
I saw that. You're like, No, I take that back. It's 68 right now.
But we live a little different on the east side.
It's been a cold, not that wet Midwest. We don't really have spring here. We kind of go from winter to 40s and overcast, and then all of a sudden in the first week in June, it's summer, right?
Well, if the treaters are backing up,
today may be our one day of spring.
If they're backing up and not buying a lot of open market wood, and you can buy one and better products at close to the same price or even the same price as number 2 products, as Charles alluded to, then that tells you they have too much.
I think Ash
inventory.
said that. I think Ash said number 1 and number 2 are compressing. I don't.
So
buy
then
a lot of
the question is, if they have too much inventory, and then the other side of what you just said, Charles, of them making plans about the future to slow things down on a larger scale, nationally, then what does that mean for all of us? Like, are we just going to see a general slowdown in the consumption of building products? I mean, that kind of talk makes me a little nervous.
So here's what
I was just starting to feel a little bit better about the second half of the year, but now I'm starting to think, like, maybe is demand slowing? I mean, is it going to drop a little bit?
Ashley and I were having this conversation last night.
I think. Go ahead, rather.
No, Ashley and I were having this conversation last night. It's like, we have housing starts for April are going to come out on Friday. They're forecast to be, they're forecast to be modestly lower, I believe, and probably have that's weather related more than anything. But we were having discussions. We said coming into the year that a demand side was going to be relatively steady with last year, plus or minus a few percentage points, depending on how things lay out. And at this juncture, there's no reason to think that it's anything different. There's no collapse coming. Ashley's point was, when you look at what the big builders are increasing their share of total building because they can.
They have money.
They have the financial wherewithal. They have the ability to do a lot of things that small and medium-sized builders can't. Multifamily has stabilized, but is still, there's a ton of projects that aren't penciling still, and we'll have to see what happens, whether that kicks in Q3, Q4. And we've just been talking about home center, which is, sounds to me like it's flattish to down at best.
Yeah. I think flat is kind of the new up, right? So, hey, let's
glass half full, Matt. Glass half full, my friend.
I mean, I have a relatively lean inventory. I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other here going into the summer. I'd like it for me to be a little bit busier, but you know what? I'm patient man, and I know that things do change, and so I'm not really going to freak out about a couple days of slower business.
The market's not going up. Just figure it's going to be down until they increase the CBD. It's just going to be down. I'll
know it's down, Greg, when the mills stop calling me and trying to get me to buy things they want to load tomorrow, right? That's when I know it's down. When I stop getting those phone calls.
Hey, you want to load it tomorrow? It'll roll tomorrow. What do you want to buy?
No. Ash came in this morning. He said, "Hey, I got a call from a guy. Says he's really busy. Wanted me to make sure I didn't miss out on it." I go, "Yeah, well, yeah. Okay, so you're not that."
Well, no, I knew they were busy. I knew they were busy on Monday because I couldn't get him on the phone. I didn't hear from him. And when he said,
that's a game everybody's playing.
No, I know, but here's an interesting thing. You made me thinking about it, and Matt did. You know why treaters probably aren't buying a lot right now? If you buy spot and sell print right now, why the hell would you build an inventory? If there's only a 2-week order file at most Southern Yellow Pine Mills, and you give them a PO and it shows up tomorrow, you are not going to build an inventory. You're buying spot and selling print. You got a $70 arbitrage on some items there. $70. Yeah. So this is to the people that buy print from these treaters. You may want to adjust what you're doing, because whoever is buying
you're gonna get hate mail. Ash, careful. You don't want hate mail.
I mean, I just saw the vein pop out of his neck.
Well, no, I'm just saying, if you're buying spot and selling print, I mean,
it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense.
You wouldn't. It make no sense to build an inventory. You don't have to. You can work off of OPM.
Oh, my head exploded.
Oh, we're using big thesaurus words.
Other people's
and
money.
Acronyms.
Other people's money.
Acronyms too, man.
Yeah.
First class.
We're
classing up the joint, Ash.
Yeah. Hey, what are your guys'?
Hold on.
What are your Charles? Hold on a second. I want to survey the three of you. Okay. What are your thoughts on the Fed potentially dropping interest rates here as we go into the second half of the year? What are your thoughts?
Not going to happen. You know what? So interest rates are never coming down. People should just plan. It's going to stay up here.
Greg, you're just running a game here, dude. This is hilarious.
Did you not see?
Lumber's always going to go down. We're never going to have
we have less inventory than we did last year.
Beautiful tax bill coming up that's going to be
less inventory than we did last year.
Big, beautiful tax bill coming in that's going to be very pro-growth and, all the recession. Did you see stock markets at new all-time highs? It bounced back. I mean, we're writing $100 billion deals every place that we land our old plane in the Middle East.
Oh my God!
Hey, can we please have Kip on again? Sorry, I had to call him out.
We are going to have Kip on. He's just texting me right now.
Orange man bad.
I'm happy I wasn't copied on that. Man, I had something.
I think you might push too many buttons there, brother.
I want to go back to what Matt said. So if you think about it, the big overall picture, housing, what's it going to do? Everybody's like, if you go on and see the doomsdayers, how it's going to crash. I think housing we were talking last night. Housing moves up real quick. And then it stays flat for years, right? So we may be in for just housing prices moving sideways for the next, I know people hate to hear it, 5 to 10 years. And you know what? 6%, 7% interest rates aren't really big interest rates. If everybody's hoping for them to go back to 3%, I mean, probably not going to happen. Like Matt said, what would happen if they did lower interest rates right now? I mean, I guess that's positive. So what, Greg? What do you think what will happen with rates?
I'm not fiscally smart.
We need to have Brian Westbury on to get a rate update. We'll work on that for next week. I know nothing until I talk to him. I think he'd be good to get a real read on things. And I think
Brian's show. I agree with you, Greg. That'll be.
If you look at,
and he doesn't use big words, Brian.
Yeah, no, he uses little words. He likes to make sure that
he does, Charles. He does, Charles. He just doesn't use them on our. He doesn't use them on our show.
Yeah, right. He waits until he's on Fox.
Yeah. To Ashley's point, if you have the stock market up at all-time highs and inflation at 2% and unemployment where it's at, honestly, all we really need to do is deal with the budget deficit. If we do that, if we get a pro-tax bill, then everything's going to be better. And to Ashley's point, 5% interest rates, 6% mortgage rates, not a big. That's not a big deal. I'll give you perspective. In the 1980s, do you know what mortgage rates were?
20%.
Really high. I was born in 86, so I wasn't old.
Yeah, 1986 fixed interest rates were 13.5, 14%.
Wow.
On a $50,000 house.
That is a difference.
No. That townhouse you lived in cost more than that.
That's true. That's true. No, it'll be interesting to see what's happening up. Well, let's kind of circle it up here. What is
why I'm enjoying this? Unless Matt's got a curfew.
No,
I do. Yeah.
Anybody want to go over?
Hiding? Why is the light off?
I don't know. It's smart technology, and I'm not very smart.
So let's just all go around and say, what are you seeing your smart buyers do? What are you seeing one of your smart buyers do? What do you think buyers should do, and what are you going to do over the next 30 days with your inventory? Well, we'll start there.
My perspective has changed
based on today's pod.
Just the wealth of knowledge that was shared on this podcast. My perspective has changed. I think it's a little bit more wait and see. No, a deal today is not going to be a good deal tomorrow. And I think anybody that's smart realizes that too. And that's why they're waiting. And to your point, Ash, bringing up Eastside 4-inch, I think a big piece of that is you look at the states that are involved in Eastside, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Southern Virginia.
Yeah.
South Carolina cut 750 million board foot of production out.
Mm-hmm.
And a majority of that production was 4-inch and 6-inch, a little bit 8-inch. So that's part of the reason. So a lot of that Georgia wood, instead of staying in Georgia or going down to Florida, is going to South Carolina, and Alabama's going to Central Florida. And that's another reason why freight rates are so high. Anything in South Carolina, staying in South Carolina, North Carolina wood's going north. So it's I don't know. I mean, when you buy things that you need and you give the mill what they want, and then you see all of this coming, and you talk to your friends that are in the spruce business and the Western species business, and everybody's kind of mirroring the same thing. And you give the mill prices that they want because you can afford to pay them. And then, you want to be opportunistic and try to take advantage and alleviate some buildups, and things don't happen, but then somebody else does it. It makes it really, really difficult to feel confident in pulling the trigger.
I'm going to address that a little differently. So, when the market's going up, doesn't matter how much inventory I have, I don't have enough. When the market's going down, it doesn't matter how little my inventory. I mean, you've been good. Our inventory is 50% of what it was last year.
Yeah.
And I'm really happy about that. But when I walked out the other day, I went, we got too much wood. We got to reduce it because the market's not going up. I mean, seasonally for the spruce and Western species, between now and the 4th of July is a seasonal low in lumber. I mean, regardless of what happens with down the road, summer shutdowns are real and they're going to reduce that supply. So, I mean, somewhere between, here and, mid-late June, I would expect, the market to bottom out and have some sort of a bounce into mid-July. But that having been said, I think from my perspective, Ash, is I think we should try and hang in, not significantly increase our inventory, just increase our turns. It's a lot more work, but, I think that's probably a smarter thing for us to do. I mean,
carry less, turn it faster.
The reality is, Ash, you can buy more lumber in a morning than you and I can sell in a month.
That's true.
Ashley's always good at the Texas hedge. Has been for years. Taught me that, actually. I have a different motivator than Gregg or Charles. I'm actually heading out of the country for a couple of weeks, so I've got to, I'm not going to be here to manage my business for 2 weeks.
The market always goes up when I travel.
What's that say?
It's backwards.
Yeah.
Well, I know, but you can see the first name, right?
Kip.
Oh, I gotcha.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
Kip.
So he called. So he's watching, and he called me out immediately. So,
Matt, you're going to be in Italy. When are you guys? When are you
Yeah,
leaving?
I'm going to Spain and Italy.
Are you going to the Basque region?
No, I'm going to. My daughter's she's a junior at Gonzaga, and she's on a 6-month exchange program. She's got a minor in Spanish, and so she's she went to Spanish school as a kid. She's been speaking Spanish since she was like 5 years old. So we're going to go pick her up in Spain and then go over to Italy and visit the Vatican, get a guided tour of that place, and just be tourists for a few days in Rome. And then I'm going to come back, and my wife and my daughter are going to go to Greece for a few days. So they're going to have a little extra time together, and then they'll come back like a week later. So I'm just going to be gone. And when I'm gone on vacation or doing an industry event for a week, or I was like last month, I was in Texas for a week. It's really hard for me to do all that stuff and manage, my inventory and then my rail car business. I can't. And so I'm not going to be here to babysit all the trucking issues, to answer every RFQ, to just be a manager of a business. And when I'm not here, I don't trust that I don't really put the pressure on somebody else to manage it for me. It just isn't going to get done. So why go out? Like if you're me right now, would you go out and buy a couple million feet of inventory knowing you're not going to be here? No,
probably not.
Yeah, I mean, so my whole motivation is just run my business as best I can for the next 10 days and then hop on a jet plane and come back early June, start scratch and see what the market conditions are at that point. But between now and then, I'm just doing the best I can to fight for every order day to day. And it's working, but it's work. It's not necessarily fun. It's just necessary, right?
Yeah. So my caveat to the whole thing is that my perspective is kind of a 2 to 3 week window, right? I mean, that's kind of the world I live in the truck market. Whereas, y'all and Western species and what, PNW species, like that's a car at least a week, 2 week arrival, right? A majority of it to go to your major consuming markets. So I want to make sure that that's my caveat. That's a short-term perspective. I think things will change, but I don't think it's going to change within the next, I don't know, 3 business weeks.
I think
I should have clarified that.
I think the way I'll sum it up is I agree. I think less inventory. I'm not as bulled up right now, and maybe that means we're going to move higher. There's so much uncertainty. I did see some big buyers come in 2 weeks ago, and like one of those big moves we saw on 104 and 5 Ace were all people buying for May, June, maybe we're buying volume. We sold a lot of trucks of volume of 104 and 5 Ace to Virginia, to North Carolina, to other locations. I saw multifamily buying. I saw large retail buying to cover jobs. They said they were covering jobs, and I think they felt that way. I know there's a saying out there that 2x4, 104, and 5/8 leads the market up and leads the market down. We'll see. And as far as 2x4 number 2 pine goes, I got to say, I've seen more buyers that normally were using other items switch over to pine in the last 30 to 60 days. And like legitimately, Greg and I heard of another large one that last week, and just because it's easier to access quick fiber for them, and they didn't want to switch back and forth, and they kind of made the move over. So maybe that's one of the reasons. That's the farthest basis away from everything else is the east side, and maybe there's a reason for it being there. But I have seen more of that, and as these Western spruce mills start taking product off, I mean, my God, they've already removed half of their production in the last few years. It's almost coming
probably more like 60%.
60,
right?
It's almost coming to a point where it's a small amount of the market that we really start looking at other things besides that anymore to make judgments off of which way the market's moving.
Now, all right. So I have 2 questions and caveats to that. So 2x4 9-foot Southern Yellow Pine has been astronomically high for the past since March, end of February, early March, and
what is that delivered in the Southeast today? 2x4 9.
Call it Georgia or Central Florida?
Georgia.
Georgia.
520.
And you compare that with like spruce 2 and better Georgia today. We'll call it 585. And 2x6.
But 2 weeks ago, it was almost $600.
2x6, Charles?
No, 2x4.
No, what's
2 weeks
2x6?
ago?
What's
2x6. 485.
Right. And spruce has come down a lot, but it's still probably 6.25-ish.
Yep. But see, that number psychologically to buyers is a comfortable level though, right? I think once you hit a 7 handle and 6-inch, that's when people start asking questions and swapping from a psychological standpoint.
Yeah, when I think 2x6 pine is that price is actually up. I thought that price was in the the 425 to 450 range earlier this year.
Mm-hmm. It was.
And that's when spruce was 750.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right.
One last thing. So futures expires tomorrow. Is that correct?
Yeah.
What, are we going to see anything exciting? I didn't even look where are we at right now.
I don't think there's hardly any open interest to really make anything exciting happen. I think everybody got out of their positions.
I mean, five. It's 553. The spreads out. July's 590. When we were in Montreal, I said, "Hey, you know what? The sign to be that the market's bottoming is when cash is a significant discount to futures, and you can buy a bunch of cash and have an easy out. You have that today on 4-inch, 6-inch has been a redheaded stepchild. Apologies to all of them that are
all
out there.
All the ginger soulless demons out there.
Gingers.
But I mean, the basis says, buy 6-inch and sell July. I mean, you're probably going to be able to have a substantial roll to September as the tariff gets built, as the increase in the CVD ADD gets built into that. Matt, I'm hoping we get that $100 bill and we can lay into it, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Hey, I will do I will be here next Wednesday, so we can do this, and then I'll be off for 2 weeks. So hopefully, you guys don't replace me. I kind of enjoy doing
you're
this.
Back when? June.
I'll be back 5th? June 1st, I believe. That's a Sunday, so I'll be back on the 2nd, back in the chair at the mothership.
And I'll leave a week. I leave a week after that, and I'll be gone the second half of June. So
nice.
I'll be here in Bishopville.
You'll be there. I mean, well, that's because that's a vacation spot. I mean, you're in
the epicenter of stress-free.
You should just have them build a universal park right next door. I'll come down and visit you.
And then Gregg's got his last daughter getting married September.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I need a better market, man.
I just booked the hotel room from that, and we need to sell some lumber.
But you went to you're at the baller place, Ash.
Can we talk about something though, Gregg? Is there like in the winter, Ash can grow facial hair, and then when it warms up in Chicago, he's got to shave? Is that a Gregg rule or like a house rule? Oh,
dude, I have no rules about anybody.
I went to the
I can tell with your stretched out shirt. What is
I went to the number one trimmer today.
T-shirt.
I went to the number one today trimmer.
There it is.
Yeah.
All right, you guys. It's been real.
Rip curl today.
I appreciate it. It really helped out. It helped me.
See you guys. Hey, it's great. Awesome.
Y'all be good.
Always enjoy it. Thank you guys.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of The Lumber Word. The Lumber Word podcast is dedicated to engaging conversations about the lumber industry, including trading ideas, market trends, and evaluations of overvalued and undervalued assets. We wish to emphasize that the discussions and opinions expressed in this podcast are purely for informational and entertainment purposes. They should not be considered as financial or investment advice. We encourage our listeners to make their own financial decisions, taking into account their unique circumstances and financial goals, and to seek professional financial advice if necessary.